Hey, history students, Professor Berninger here. Who else would it be? So I want to talk to you a little bit about journalism, yellow journalism, and of course, as ever, we're going to connect it right to today because sadly the connections are all too easy to make. So one thing I've been pushing you all on this semester is to be an engaged, informed citizen who votes, maybe even becomes politically active, supporting a candidate, supporting a political party. It's very important, folks. You're not doing your duty to this country. You're a bad citizen if you are not working to be informed and if you're not voting and being engaged in the civic process. I know it's not easy. Some people love it, but most people don't love it. And a lot of people are just like, leave me alone. But you got to do it for your country, people. Be a patriot here. So yellow journalism. Now, I grabbed a definition here from Britannica, and I'm just going to go through it. It's a little long, but it's very important, and I'm going to try to draw on it just to, enliven things up a little bit here. Yellow journalism. Now, it's called yellow journalism. It's kind of a good title, but it's really based on nothing specific about the color yellow as related to journalism. But it just happens to be tied to one of the people who was involved in it. So, the use of lurid features and sensationalized news and newspaper publishing to attract readers and increase circulation. So this is the most important thing I'm going to tell you today. News organizations are businesses. They want to make money. They must make money for their shareholders to pay their employees. So remember that. Okay? I am sure if I was in the classroom with you and I said, why do news organizations cover what they cover? Somebody, some well-meaning person, young person, like a lot of you are young, would raise your hand and say, because they want us to know what's important. That's great. It's naive, frankly. I'm going to just be honest with you. And you know what? I would have said the same thing when I was a student at Columbia Green. They run stories that are going to keep people with the TV turned on, paying subscriptions to the newspapers, to the magazines, clicking on stuff so you have to look at ads online. News organizations need people to watch, to read, to show up so they can increase their ratings, their circulation, so they can sell ads, so they can make money because it's a business. And, that's not the worst thing in the world. But you have to remember that to understand this, to understand yellow journalism and journalism today. So, the use of lurid features and sensationalizes. You really get something hepped up, right? Stay tuned. Our story coming up next. Britney Spears, you know, clothing malfunction. Oh my, I've got to watch that, right? Sensationalized. Worst president ever about to give speech. That's sensationalizing the news, right? Why do they do it? Because people will stay tuned in. People will want to watch it. The phrase was coined in the 1890s to describe the tactics employed in the furious competition between two New York City newspapers, The World and The Journal. Today, that same competition takes place more on television, but it is a furious competition for readers, not a furious competition for quality, honesty, integrity. It is a furious competition to get readers. Joseph Pulitzer had purchased the New York World in 1883 using color for sensational reporting and crusades against political corruption. Well, that's good. And social justice. I hope it wasn't against social justice. And he had the largest newspaper circulation in the country. Then another famous newspaper mogul, William Randolph Hearst from California, shows up and buys another New York City newspaper to try to compete. So then you have these two competing newspapers, and what sells? Well, lurid, sensationalized stuff is what gets people to reach for their newspaper instead of the other newspaper. So you have really good political cartoons, well-drawn political cartoons. The Yellow Kid was a running feature by this guy, Richard F. Outcault. a cartoonist, and that's where the term yellow journalism comes from. But that's really kind of beside the point. So news outlets need viewers, readers, clickers, ratings. They run things to get people to look there. They run things to get people to look there and to stay tuned so they can sell ads and make money. They don't cover things that should be covered. They cover things that people want to see. And of course, what we want to see is not always and maybe rarely what we should be seeing. All right. Here's a nice political cartoon about yellow journalism. And you see all the people here putting money in the machine. It's a big money machine. And this jester is throwing out these newspapers. And we have attacks on honest officials, venom, appeals to passion, right? Not to the mind, sensationalism. And look at all the people lining up to get it, right? And it just, those of you who just don't want to be assaulted with hype and sensationalism, you just tune it out, right? But we'll talk about where you should go a little bit later. So this cartoon is really fantastic because you see the people just snapping up all of the sensationalist stuff. There's an expression in the news business. It's got to bleed to lead. Local news anyway. If there's a shooting, a stabbing, that's going to be our first story because that's what will get people to tune in, right? That's what will get people to tune. And so that's a good cartoon there. This, of course, is sort of the height or the bottom, however you want to call it, of yellow journalism. It actually got the Spanish-American War, in many ways, got the Spanish-American War started. The Maine was blown up in Havana Harbor. In Cuba, the ship the Maine, and that's what drew the United States into the Spanish-American War, created the Spanish-American War. Not so much that the Maine exploded, but the fact that the New York Journal, destruction of warship Maine was the work of an enemy. It probably was not. It probably just blew up. Ships were run by steam, and you know what? Sometimes they blew up on their own. What's going to make people reach for a newspaper? A headline that says, ship blows up on its own. Well, who cares, right? But destruction of the warship Maine was the work of an enemy. I've got to read that. I'm going to grab for this. And there's a reward. Maybe I'll solve the case. Probably not. And I'll get the reward. And sure enough, they want to sell papers. But this, of course, the problem is, the readers are like, oh my God, we need to go attack somebody. And then next thing you know, the public wants a war. We got to go out and get these enemies who blew up our ship. And then out of nowhere, well, not quite out of nowhere, but the excitement for war comes up, right? And, that gets the public behind it. And then the politicians are kind of pressured into it. Maybe they wanted to have a war with Spain, but either way, it just stirs the pot, right? It stirs up the pot and gets people worked up, and boom, we have a war that, the fuse was lit at least by this headline here. Now, here's some more from that Britannica article. Notice I have my citation. Britannica Academic is a fine source, by the way, a fine source. It is available through our college library. That's a good place to get it. The cat is, what's wrong, Simon? Oh, no, he stopped. The era of yellow journalism may be said to have ended shortly after the turn of the 20th century. Quick review. That would be going from 1800s to 1900s, right? We live in the 21st century. With the world's gradual retirement from the competition and sensationalism. World, that's the newspaper. Some techniques of yellow journalism period, however, became more or less permanent and widespread, such as banner headlines, colored comics, and copious illustration. In other media, most notably television and the internet, many of the sensationalist practices of yellow journalism may be more commonplace. Without question, they are, right? Do you know the term clickbait? Trying to get you to click on things, so you have to look at more ads on the internet. And also, we're going to talk about this before the semester's over. You know, on servers, which is where computer data is stored, there's a whole file on you. There are thousands of files and data points. Everything you do online gets stored in a file on you, so that people can pay to have that information about you. So we'll get back to that, if not today, later in the semester. It's 10 minutes in here, so I'm actually going to just sort of stop there and move on to the second half of my presentation.